Welcome to Write Now Workshop Podcast, where you can write a book and change the world. I'm your host, Kitty Bucholtz, and this is episode 110, Hallmark Publishing Needs Sweet Stories, an interview with Stacey Donovan, coming to you on Thursday, November 15th, 2018. I just finished talking to editor Stacey Donovan at Hallmark Publishing, and it was so much fun. I met her at a conference. I've been following her on Twitter, commenting on her funny posts and her interesting posts, and talking to her like person to person was really even more fun than I had hoped. So we had a great conversation. Now, we did end up having to keep it a little bit short because she very kindly agreed to actually record 2 episodes. One from the perspective of being a publisher, or that is an editor at a publishing house. And she talks today about all the things that you need to know about whether Hallmark Publishing is a company that you would want to pursue publication with, which I think they sound awesome. And then the other interview is going to come to you sometime in the next couple of weeks. I don't have the exact date, where she's going to be talking to us as an author. She's the author of Sunrise Cabin, which just came out in September 2018. So, first of all, let's talk about publishing. Here is the interview with Stacey. I hope you enjoy it and write down those dates. You could submit your story to Hallmark Publishing very soon. Today's guest is Stacey Donovan. Stacey grew up in Central Illinois, earned her MFA in creative writing at the University of Arizona in Tucson, and was a master writer at Hallmark in Kansas City, where she wrote several gift books and children's books. She now lives in Los Angeles with her husband and their 3 rescue dogs. A true optimist, she loves stories with happy endings, random acts of kindness, and adventures big and small. Welcome, Stacey.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I have been talking about you and Hallmark for a couple of months on the podcast now.
Wow, that is wonderful. We're still so new, so it's nice, but appreciate you helping to get the word out.
Absolutely. Well, and I have to start, I'm sorry. I also have a master's degree in creative writing, but it is not nearly as cool as you got to call yourself a master writer.
Isn't that funny that that's a real job title? So yeah, that's Hallmark, you know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I figured, why don't we just ask you, like, how did you kind of get started? How did you end up at Hallmark? You know, it's one of those things I always wanted to do when I was a little kid. I'd be in the Hallmark store. I'd read every single card. It didn't matter to me that I didn't have any nephews, you know?
Right. You
So,
know, it's a really
us.
lucky. I started at Hallmark a long time ago, and it was a dream job, a really great break for me. I hadn't even thought about it. I was over at a friend's apartment, and then they had a writing and editing portfolio that you could fill out, that you could do the exercises in the portfolio. And one of my friends just had it sitting around her apartment, and I thought, well, I'm going to try that. And so at the time it was like 12 writing and editing exercises. It was really intense. I spent a really long time on it. I got lucky. And so that's how I got the job originally. So, and it was fantastic because you'd write cards, you'd write, material for the website, kids books, gift books, all kinds of different things. So it was a really wonderful experience for me as a writer, definitely. Yeah.
Wow. And did you do that after your master's degree, or did you kind of do?
I did. I went there right after grad school, actually. Yeah. Just a few months after.
Oh, what a great opening.
Really lucky.
Right.
Yeah. So, and prospects for MFA, people with MFAs in creative writing can be kind of dicey. So it really was very lucky. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, you and I have lived in a lot of the same places. I'm a Midwesterner born and bred. I lived in Scottsdale and Phoenix, Arizona for a while.
Really? That's so funny.
I know. I was wondering how often we've lived within 200 miles of each other.
Really funny. Yeah.
Oh.
And I never imagined myself living in Los Angeles. So we just moved here in late May, and that's been a big change and really exciting.
Yeah. Well, that might be a good segue into, did you move there for your new position?
I did. So when I started out with the publishing job, I was still in Kansas City, but it really was, everybody I was working with was in Los Angeles. So eventually I felt like, I really need to go ahead and make the move, because it's so much better to be able to connect with people in person. So it was definitely the right thing to do. Yeah.
Oh, nice, nice. Now, it's totally fine. My computer beeps at me sometimes. So I'm like, why are you doing that? Okay, so we've taken care of the sounds on both of our computers, which is awesome. So tell us a little bit, a lot of people, myself included, I was very happily surprised, but a lot of people are surprised when I've said Hallmark Publishing as a company, as opposed to Hallmark something and publishing something else. So this is a relatively new company. Tell us more about it.
Oh, yes. So it's actually a business that I pitched to Prime Media, the Hallmark Channel. So
cool.
I had the idea for a while, and Hallmark Cards is the parent company in Kansas City, and Crown Media, which is Hallmark Channel, the entertainment portion, is a sister company that's in Los Angeles. And I felt like that sister company, Crown Media, that books would be a good fit, a good extension of what they were already doing on the channel with movies. And so the way it came about is I creeped on the schedule of the CEO and found out when he was going to be in Kansas City. And I emailed him, and I didn't know him at all. I emailed him and said, can I have a half hour to pitch a business to you? And he very graciously said yes. And so I met with him and told him about my ideas. And as it turned out, they had already been thinking about this also. So I thought it wasn't just my original idea. They had also been thinking about it. So it was serendipity, I would say. And that's how it came about. So, yeah.
Oh, man.
Very exciting.
Yeah. And so was it, did you have to pitch yourself as the director, or did they just say, yep, and you should do it?
I guess when I pitched the business, I kind of pitched myself as the director also.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Now, so when I was looking, I think at the Hallmark site and also just doing lots of Googling, because as soon as I found out, I was like, oh, how could I not have known about this? But by the time I found out, I think it was right before the RWA conference in July, maybe June or something like that. So you had actually only been publishing books for about 8 months at that point, right?
It was not a very long time. And we started out with doing companion novels to the movies. So you have a movie, and then a writer creates a book version of it, and they add some bonus content. They add an epilogue that comes after the movie ends, because sometimes people watch the movies and then they want to know what happens after the kiss at the end.
Right.
And so that's where we started out, and we started out with ebooks only. But very quickly, we moved into paperback as well. And then we moved into original fiction. So, yeah. And so some of those books, could become movies in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the other exciting thing for you have had a year or two of really exciting things. The other really cool part is that your book, your first adult novel, and I need to make sure that doesn't sound like adult novel, but your first non-children's novel was the very first of the original books to come out.
It was such a funny thing, because I had developed a few storylines before for Hallmark Channel. So there was a movie even before the publishing business started that I developed the basic storyline for, and then the scriptwriter wrote the script off of that. And so I developed 2 more storylines that I was going to assign to other writers to turn into books. So I got them greenlit internally with the programming team, and then I was going to assign them. But one of those concepts, I couldn't let it go, because I loved the characters so much that I couldn't bring myself to hand it off to another author. So I said, well, I'm going to write it myself. And actually, I have published a few romances, but that's been under a pen name. So this is the first one under my own name. But so I worked on it, and I thought that we would have a few other original fiction releases before mine was scheduled, but we just didn't find them in time. So then I was really nervous about the first one being my book.
Yeah.
I even asked months beforehand, I even said to my boss, look, it's going to look really embarrassing if the director of the company, if the first book is by her, and so we should push it off 1 year. And he's like, nah, no one's going to notice. So he didn't let me off the hook at all. I was very, very anxious in putting that out there, and very worried about what people would think of it. Luckily, so far, people have really liked it. So that was a huge relief to me. So,
oh man. Yeah. All right. So you and I talked beforehand that we're actually going to record 2 episodes at the same time. We're going to interview you as an editor and as a writer. So, so we'll cover more. People are going to want to know more about your writing path. So we'll do that more later. But one of the questions I was wondering was, and you just kind of alluded to, being nervous, what people would think, but what was easier or harder about being an editor as part of your job and being the person who assigns stories, and now you're the writer, you're on the other side?
Oh, right. So, and I should point out that most of our stories, I don't come up with the ideas for. It's just a couple of times that I've developed the storylines for them. So I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. But I would say as a writer for my own, I've been a writer before, but for other publishing companies. And so as a writer for my own publishing company, I just felt such an enormous amount of responsibility to make a good impression and set a standard, So it was just, I would say it was just a lot more pressure.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Now, you're the director of the company, but you're also, and tell me, because I might have this wrong, are you also one of the editors, like a traditional publishing company that has editors who are handling authors?
Yes. So I work with several contract editors, but I am the acquiring editor for it. And so if we acquire a book that someone sent us the full manuscript, I make that decision. I read the submissions. I have some help with that. Okay. But yeah. And then some books that come through agents start as a proposal first. And with that path, if I have a proposal, that gets greenlit, not just by me, but by the internal programming team. So we like to be very consistent and have the movies and the books all tie together and be the same kinds of stories. And because of that, they have to greenlight a book that's on proposal only as well. So that's how it works. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's funny. Since I met you at RWA and you were just so cheerful and chipper, and I was like, I got to follow her on Twitter. I think my phone only beeps when you do a tweet, because I think you might be the only person that I like and comment on really regularly.
Oh, that's so funny. That's really nice.
But you've had some great tweets. They make me laugh and smile and but you also are really super helpful and generous with the information for writers who want to know more about what Hallmark wants. So do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. And I try to share as much information as I can, because I know what it's like to be on the other side and submitting and just trying to find out, what do they want? When do they want it? How does it work? Yeah. And so the best guide to the kinds of stories we're looking for are really the movies on the Hallmark Channel. And so the really wholesome, sweet, uplifting romance and the kind of cozy mysteries that we have on the Hallmark Movies and Mysteries channel. And with the romance, it has to be a lot more wholesome than some people realize. And so people will say to me, oh, well, there is one sex scene, but I don't show it. It's off the page. You just know it happened. I'm like, no, we don't do that. At RWA, someone asked me, is it okay to have like a secret baby story, which is where she had her baby and he doesn't know about the baby? And I'm like, no, because they don't have sex. So how could there be a baby? So it's much more, I sometimes use the term clean romance, and some romance writers object to that, understandably, because, what they're writing isn't dirty. And I would never imply that. And I read all kinds of romance as a reader in my own time. And I write all kinds of romance. But I do use clean romance sometimes just because people know what it means. And if you say sweet romance, the industry term, not everybody actually is familiar with that. But it's a very, very sweet romance, whereas sweet and squeaky clean as wholesome as you can get. Yeah.
And I think for people who watch a lot of movies, you would say that it's G-rated. It's not even PG-rated, right?
That's right. G-rated. Absolutely. And so we're looking for those sweet, uplifting romances and cozy mysteries with a real emphasis on the cozy. Okay. So we really still like that feeling, that sense of place, with the amateur sleuth. For the mysteries, they don't need to have a seasonal tie-in. For the romances, we do like a seasonal tie-in. So Christmas, winter, spring, June weddings, summer, fall, we really like to have that tie-in, with the story, which is really different from other publishers.
Yeah.
And other publishers will sometimes avoid Christmas stories because they think, well, I can't, sell it all year, or they're a little more, we're all in on Christmas.
Yeah.
It works really well. So, yeah.
I've been enjoying traveling around the world and living in different places because of my husband's work. But I have to say, once Hallmark Publishing, and then, oh my goodness, poor me, I'm going to have to watch more Hallmark movies. And I'm like, I'm not in America. How can I do this? But how
the best research for a writer is to watch the channel, honestly, and there's worse research.
yeah, definitely. And for anybody, so there's about 45 or 50 countries represented in our listener base. So for anybody who's not in the US and is trying to figure out how you would watch a Hallmark movie, there is a different Netflix catalog for each territory. So probably there's no Hallmark movies on Netflix in America because Hallmark is in America, I would guess.
We have Hallmark Movies Now, which is a streaming service, but I don't know if it's available globally or not. I should know that, so I should find out.
I will find out for you. I will try to sign up. But so if you're outside the US and listening, I've found, I think there's 3 or 4, maybe 5 Hallmark movies on Netflix in Sweden. So.
Oh, okay. Great. Yeah. That's nice to know. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of that, I do get questions about settings, and we will work with authors from anywhere, but we do have a strong preference for stories set in the United States. I'll never say never with anything, but it's extremely unlikely that we would do a story that wasn't set in the United States. So.
Yeah. And Christmas stories, you prefer them to be in a location with snow?
We do. Yes. It's very rare that we'll do a Christmas story that isn't in a snowy location. Yeah. So.
I have to say, I'm really, really looking forward to having snow this Christmas, even though people have said, well, southern Sweden isn't really the snowy part. I'm like, I will take a train to see the snow. Oh.
Yeah.
Now, another thing you may want to elaborate on, or maybe what I mentioned is enough, but if listeners already have an agent, they don't need to go through the same process. If listeners don't have an agent, you still have a process for how they could reach you. Can you talk about that?
That's right. Yeah. So if you're a writer with an agent, the agent can email me directly. To get my email, they can probably just direct message me on Twitter. That's what a lot of them do. And as I say, if you're an agented writer, we will look at proposal only to start with. And but for if you don't have an agent, our next open submission period is anytime in the month of February 2019. I expect we'll have a second open period in 2019 as well, because even though it's very hard to nail our exact kind of story, which is why I say watch the movies, it'll really help. But even though it's hard to nail it, we do want to be open to new writers. And it's okay if you don't have a big name, because Hallmark's a big name.
Exactly.
So we like to be open to new writers too. What else do I want to say about submissions? Our word count is 65,000 minimum, and we're serious about that. Because people do like send me short stories and novellas and write and who knows, we might have a call for something like that for an anthology sometime in the future. But for now, the full-length novels are our focus. Yeah.
Excellent. Very good. And can I just say, as a reader, thank you. I don't know whose decision it is, but thank you for making the book so reasonably priced as an ebook that I have no guilt about buying every single one of them so far.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. And we're leaving the ebooks at that price. Yeah. So
yay. There's a point at which I feel like, okay, this is as much as going out to lunch. And would I really go out to lunch today? Oh, this is great. I'm so excited because I submitted during your last open period in 2000 well, it is still 2018, right. September 1. And I saw something on your Twitter feed that you actually got a ton of submissions.
We did. We are trying to climb out under them. And the people who haven't heard back yet, it almost always means that you've made it through the first cut. We usually do one cut and then go back and then look at them some more and more carefully. But we did with September. We closed on Labor Day, and September 3rd and September 4th. It was just this massive amount of submissions. So we are getting through them as quickly as we can. We don't like to rush. We like to give everything good consideration. But hopefully soon we'll be all caught up again. Yeah. So,
awesome. Now, when people.
And I really hope that people understand too with submissions, and this is something that's concerned me a lot since being on the other side of submissions. As a writer who was submitting, it was really hard for me not to take a rejection as a judgment of the quality of my work, or of the story I submitted, or even a judgment of my talent or worth as a writer. And now, being on the other side of it, I know how flawed that thinking is. Publishers pass on good books all the time, and they pass on good writers all the time. And so you really can't take that as an indication of, should I keep even trying to publish this story? Yes, of course you should. Should I keep even trying to write? Of course you should keep writing. Because it's so much of it is about how it fits with the publisher's list and the publisher's needs at the time. And so you really have to keep those things in perspective,
I am so glad that you said that. I'm always trying to offer encouragement to the listeners, and I think that is one of the most encouraging things an editor could say.
Yeah, it is. You can't take it as a judgment of who you are as a writer, your talent at all. And I think that mostly writers succeed by you keep on learning, you keep trying to get better, but also just persevering and not giving up on your story.
Yeah.
And I've known people who have published very successful books after getting rejected 20, 30 times. Okay.
Right. Those are great stories.
And it's tough to get that many rejections and to not give up. Jack Canfield, a Chicken Soup for the Soul guy, giant franchise, right? Like, I don't know, like how much money does it make? Like $1 billion? It's huge. So many titles in every country, his first initial book got rejected 144 times. Can you imagine getting 144 rejections? I'm a pretty determined person. I still would have given up, to be honest. And back at the time, like, what was it, the early 80s or late? I didn't even know there were 144 publishers.
That's what I was thinking.
Right?
Great digital publishing.
You know how hard you have to believe in yourself to not give up. And he made I don't know how much, like $1 billion industry out of it.
That's amazing.
It's really important not to take one rejection as a judgment of your potential, and to keep on writing, to keep on submitting, stick to your guns. There's a reason you wrote that story. Just because it doesn't fit for one person doesn't mean it won't fit for somebody else. So Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I would give you a hug if I could, just because I'm so happy the way that you're just probably making people feel like I need to keep going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, listen, we have a little bit of a, you and I have a little bit of a scheduling thing. We're going to try to do two interviews here before you have to move on to other meetings. So
Yes.
let's talk a little bit more about, let's see, any tips. And when I say any tips, what I'm referring to is that I know that you had a tip sheet out at RWA, and also if you could give people your website address, because I'm afraid I can't remember it, but there was a ton of useful information on your website.
Yeah. Okay. So the submission guidelines are at Hallmark Channel /HallmarkPublishing.com, and then click on Write for Us, and there's our complete submission guidelines. And then I'll say also a place where a lot of story ideas will fall down is because for the romances, you really have to develop the arc of, if you have a male main character in your romance, you really have to develop his journey as well. We'll get a lot of ones where he's just in love with her the whole time through. Doesn't have any conflicts about it. And that's a lovely idea, but we like to see conflicts on both sides. And we like to see both characters, what you call a character arc, both characters change and grow throughout the story, not just one of them. And so that's one place where storylines will fall down a lot. And then also for a publishing company that likes stories about wishes come true and princesses and stuff, we actually want things to be pretty realistic when it comes to jobs and people's decisions to do things. And so, like, if they wind up staying in a small town for a while, they have to have good reasons to. So working on the believability and the motivation for the characters can be really important too. So those are my tips.
Excellent. I love it. That's great stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'm trying to think of anything else in our last couple of minutes here that we might be able to say on the publishing and editing side. You've given already so many great tips.
I'm trying to think of any other questions people have. Our contracts are really similar to other traditional publishing contracts. The royalty structure is pretty similar. We will never sign a contract that doesn't include movie rights, and that's because we want to make your book into a movie a lot of times. And so, and if it does get made into a movie, that's a 50% royalty to the author. So some people have been concerned that we just are grabbing the rights, and that's not how it works. You get another very nice payday if your book gets made into a movie. And so that's something people have asked about. Trying to think of anything else, but those are some of the things. Yeah.
And I'm sure that, one of the best things that people can do, you now have at least, let me see, do you have 4 original titles out now? Plus half a dozen?
We have 1 fall book and 3 Christmas books out now. So they're just like perfect for snuggling up with some hot chocolate. So it's a great time to read them. And and we have like 12 original novels coming out next year already. So
nice. So definitely reading the lists that you already have out would be another great way to do research.
Absolutely, definitely. Yeah, that'll really give you a good feeling for what we're doing.
Excellent. Well, I have to say, one of the other tweets that made me laugh, because then I had to come back and put a separate comment. I can't remember if it was you or the Hallmark Publishing Twitter address. Was talking about Christmas and Evergreen, the movie, and then there is a special thing about you could get a free copy of the ebook somehow. I think if you watch the movie, right?
Right, yeah. So Nancy Nagel's so Christmas Joy was based on a novel, not a Hallmark Publishing novel actually, by Nancy Nagel. But we work with Nancy also. And during that movie, you could text a code to get a free copy of Christmas and Evergreen, which was great. Yeah.
So I wrote on there something, on the Twitter feed, something about, I'm so sad that I'm in Sweden and I can't see the movie. And then I kept thinking, why does this sound so familiar? And I went to my Kindle. Wait, I read this book like 4 months ago. and then I tagged her in the tweet thing. And I was like, I am a huge Nancy Nagel fan just from reading this book, because I think it's one of the best Christmas stories, romances I've ever read.
That is so nice. Yeah, I love that book. Wonderful book. It's So
That is
and
a good one.
it's wonderful to work with Nancy. She's such a Hallmark kind of writer. We made two of her books into Christmas movies already.
Aww.
And we have a new title coming out with her in February. That's our next release, The Secret Ingredient, right before Valentine's Day. It is darling. I know people are going to love it. Yeah.
Sweet. All right. As soon as I get and so of course I've signed up for all the Hallmark Publishing newsletter lists and everything. As soon as I get the email about pre-orders, I'm totally going to buy it.
That's awesome.
Huge fan. Listen, this has been super fun and great. I want to be aware of your time. So let me just say thank you so much for sharing all this helpful information with everyone.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.